Alright, so in the last video we were getting this set up so that we would be able to actually go through and align it. So the first thing I want to do is move it all the way up. So this will give me the ability to see all of the vertexes that I'm working with. So it'll give me the option, hopefully, to see all of these vertexes, and then I can kind of start to work with them. So I'm going to go back into the Z-axis, and some of them start to disappear, but it's okay. We'll go into edit mode, and that makes everything visible again. So what we need primarily to begin with is we need this side, my side view, to kind of start to line up with the actual side of the car. And this is going to be tough just because of the way we have to select it. So we want to select all of these vertexes on the bottom, right? Every one of them. Flipped it. And then just kind of drag them over. And we're going to repeat this process over and over again for every single face. But you can see this is getting a little bit tedious to come through because there's so many vertexes to come through and select every single one and then go back to the right view. So what would be really beneficial is if we could see the car from this perspective and this perspective at the same time. So I'm going to come back to my Z-axis. I'm just going to kind of move this off to the side a little bit. And what I want to do is hover my mouse up here at the very top of my screen. I'm going to right click and I'm going to do a vertical split. And it gives me the option to choose where this split goes. I'm just going to kind of choose the center as close as I can. And now I'm going to have two views of the same thing. But the cool thing now is I can actually flip one of the views. So what I can do is come in and now I can select all of the vertex here on the bottom. And then I can come back and select all the vertex here. Right? And then make sure I have everything selected. And then I can move them to better fit in my image. But again, selecting vertexes is tough. But if I can come in and just hold down Shift and select the edge loops, then I can still move them. And this isn't perfect, right? It's not exactly what we want, but it's getting closer to the shape that we're going to need in order to feel like we have a full car. Now you can see we're always going to be leaving some things behind that we're going to have to clean up later. But we know that this edge is supposed to be lining up with kind of the front quarter panel of our car. So we're going to go ahead and grab that edge and get it in the right place. And then these edges here are supposed to be lining up with the mirror or with the window. So we'll come up and grab all of these. And we're going to pull those in just to line up with the side of the door. And the same thing here with all of these ones. You got to come in and just select all of these here. And they line up with, well, we know they line up with the top of the door, right? So we're going to move these in. But they aren't quite right. You know, we're going to have to move them individually. So now is when we come back to the vertexes. We grab the vert, and we only want to drag them left and right. But we drag them so they line up with the actual shape of the car. And this looks really clunky. It's really hard to tell what's going on. But as long as you know that you're only moving things left and right, then you should be able to get the idea that you know where these things are supposed to be going. And again, these are the outside edges. So there's going to be a little bit of overlap maybe. But the goal is just to kind of get them in to where they're supposed to go. Whoops. Whoops. And as you kind of get them pulled in and you start to see what you're looking at, I'm going to come back to object mode. And I'm going to turn my alpha up on this so we can see the car itself. You start to see that you're getting the shape of the car. Now there's some jankiness going on right in here that we're going to have to fix. But for the most part, I've started to get this shape of the car that I want. There's always going to be some stuff to come in. Remember, this is just getting the base model of the car. So there's going to be a lot of cleanup necessary as you go through. And really, that's going to be part of the assignment, right? But one way to clean up something like this is we're just going to grab all of these vertexes here. I'm going to make sure I don't have any other ones grabbed. And then I can scale them and then move them back over. And one of the problems is that because of the shape of the top of the car, I have a lot more, really more vertexes than I need to get some of that detail left and right. But we just want to make sure that these all stay kind of evenly spaced. Right? And there's going to be a little bit more that we have to work with, but for the most part, this is a pretty good start to our car. Now, one other thing that we know is that the front of the car is not always smooth either, right? So what we want to do, my car right here is pretty well smooth, right? But what I'm going to do is come in and I just want to kind of mimic what I know is there's going to be just some contour in the car, right? Everything has a little bit of shape. And I'm going to go back to my edge selection so that I have that control. But then you have these pieces here, and you really want them to be smooth, right? There's this huge contour, but that's not the shape of the car. We know that these need to be a little bit more vertical. So I'm going to grab all of these, and I'm going to scale them together to give them kind of that up and down shape. I might scale them out just a hair. I want to make them pretty straight. I'll move them over, and then I'll do the same thing with this one, kind of straighten it up, move it over. Same thing with this one. I'm going to try to straighten it up, move it over just a bit. So that's still getting me more into the contour of this car. Now, once we have the shape kind of down, again, just trying to get some of that contour. And I know it's confusing and sometimes it's hard to tell exactly which way is where. But once you get kind of the generic shape of the car down, right? And I think we could probably accept that this front is going to need to come down a little bit to match. So I think what I'll do here is grab all of these faces, and I'm just going to scale them up just a little bit so I can then move them down and get them closer to where they're supposed to be. And you can tell over here that's messing up kind of the side of my car, but that's not a big deal because we can fix it just by coming in and we're going to grab all these verts because we know that these need to come back up. I'm just going to move them back up a little bit to kind of fit. And again, there's still this jankiness there, but I'm not worried about that right now. That's something that I'm going to fix later. All right, so now I have kind of the generic shape of the car. What I want to do, I don't have the front and the back. The front and the back is going to be really similar once you get this mirror done. But we're going to go ahead and mirror this whole thing. So I'm going to go to object mode. I'm going to object, and I'm going to duplicate, just duplicate the object here. And then if I scale it in the X direction, I can scale it all the way to the other side. And then I have kind of a pretty decent shape of a car going. Now, before I do this, right, this helps me to see what my car is going to look like. But before I do this, I'm going to want to come in and try and model the front of the car. And again, this is the same process. I'm not going to go through this with you right now. But the process is you're just going to start here and kind of extrude down. And you want to keep it in line with as many of these vertexes on the side as you can, right? And you might extrude this over, so we'll go ahead and do that, I guess, to get it started. So you might extrude this over, kind of following the contour of the car, but then you just got to make sure that everything stays in the right proportion. Right, so this is going to be the front of the car. It probably needs to come out a little bit. Some of this is subjective, right? But you know that this piece now needs at least this many edges on it to connect to the car. And then you'll use those edges. What is it? 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll go with 4 for now. So I'll insert my 4 edge loops. 4. And then I can come and select these edges, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and these edges, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I can actually bridge those loops together. And that's going to start giving me kind of the shape of this car that I'm looking for. It's not perfect, and I might even end up needing to delete maybe this face and clean it up a little bit. But it gives you something to work with. And once you have the mesh there, you can modify it to get the shape that you want. So that's kind of what we're looking at right now, is the front of the car, the top of the car, the sides, and then do the same thing with the back. The back's one of the more difficult ones just because of the way that the orientation works. Right, but you would have to pull it through and then move it down to match up with the other car. The problem with my view is that the back of the car is significantly smaller than the other views, so there's going to be a lot of subjectivity there and just kind of making it work. But once you get kind of the generic shape, then you can start polishing it and make sure you get it just like you want. And an easy way is maybe to just smooth it, but I wouldn't do that just yet. What I want to do is come in and get as much detail as I can, and that's what we're looking at right now. I'll make some more videos about polishing off the detail next week, but for this week, just focus on the top and the sides and the front and the back and just get the overall shell of the car complete. And that's kind of what we're looking at. So we will see you next week.